in a variety of ways. Myself, I'm getting a little... For Freud, the focus was on the neurotic symptom. For Reich, it was more around the character structure, etc. They were both therapists, and they used a variety of therapeutic modalities. Freud used cocaine initially. He then studied with Charcot in France and became interested in hypnosis and used hypnosis. Later, he hears of this incredible case from his friend Breuer. Is that how you say his name? Breuer. About this poor young woman, Anna O., and she, in fact, says what went on between them was, quote, a talking cure. And out of that grows psychoanalysis. So he moves from cocaine to psychoanalysis. I don't know if that movement is facilitated by cocaine or inhibited by cocaine. Reich also, as a therapist, I won't make any silly jokes about noses. Ask
he took it himself for depression.
He also used it in patients.
He gave it to one friend of his who was on the
Ask these questions when Eric is up on stage, or when Lewis is up on stage, just for a second. Ask him, because he knows this stuff better than I do. Reich started as a psychoanalyst, as you know. His therapeutic mode was initially psychoanalytic, though he quickly adapted psychoanalysis into what I think could be called character analysis, and then developed this embodied form of therapy, which came to be called Vegetotherapy. But they were both therapists using a variety of means and a variety of modalities. I think I'm ready to begin the history now. Maybe before I leave this section, any questions just about what I've talked about these? Mainly, I just want to have like a context for what we're going to be talking about here. And let's go, yeah, please. Mark.
Did I hear you correctly when you said Freud never doubted that there was a physical basis?
Never. There's a...
I didn't know if you
Throughout?
Yeah, throughout. Let me get, there's one nice quote here. No, it's actually in the second lecture. The second lecture is Libido, Toward on Energy. I have a wonderful quote there where Reich speaking about Freud, but if you read this book, Freud, Biologist of the Mind, you can see very clearly that he assumed that there was some physical basis for all of this stuff. And again, maybe Dr. Weitzner or Dr. Luce will speak to this later. See, there's a difference between believing that's a physical basis of something, but then what kind of explanation you use. Let me give you a quick example. This is actually from my PhD dissertation. You can go to NYU and read it. I'm going to do something now. Okay, when I did that, certain muscles tense, certain muscles relax, neurons fired, etc. So you could explain what I did on purely physiological level, right? You know. But you could also explain it psychologically. Why did he do this? He wanted to look at his shoes, or he was greeting his Japanese business partner and he wanted to show respect, or he was stretching his back, his lower back. You know? In other words, you could explain what I did in a variety of ways, but clearly what I did was a physical thing. Thus, Freud offered psychological or psychoanalytic explanations for human behavior, but he certainly believed that beneath them or behind them was some physical reality, even if he didn't know what that reality was. Okay. So in this talk, this first talk, I'm going to focus just on therapy. I'm not going to talk about Reich's problems with the psychoanalytic organization. I'm not going to talk about the history of that. I just want to focus on therapy. 3-minute lecture on psychoanalysis. Key features of psychoanalysis. And again, I'm trusting Dr. Weitzner, who knows this far better than I, to fill in anything that I leave out. One key feature is the existence of infantile sexuality. A second key feature is repression. And at one point, Freud says, and he wrote a book called The History of the Psychoanalytic Movement, he said, repression is the cornerstone upon which the whole of psychoanalysis rests. Originally, Freud believed that all neuroses were sexual in origin. Reich never gave that belief up. Freud does eventually when he introduces the concept of a death instinct that might explain human behavior. But originally, Freud and Reich were on the exact same page about the sexual origin of all neuroses. We live in a culture where the repression of that sexual energy or sexual libido is necessary, and this gives rise to an unconscious which often motivates our beliefs and actions, whether we know it or not. And this unconscious has its own kind of language, and it reveals itself often symbolically. So through the use of free association, to get past the censor, dream analysis, slips of the tongue, and here I just want to introduce you to, wait a second. Oh, wait, don't do that. Forgive me. Something screwy just happened here. Oh, there it is. No. Oh, gosh, do I love these devices. I had it all set up. Okay, bear with me for a second. Somehow it disappeared. So let's try this. Yeah. There's Freud in his first slip. I love this image. It's probably my own perversity, but isn't that a nice image? That's from Gibbon, that cartoonist from many years ago. Let me go back here now. Why did that close? No. When the resolution changed, I got lost here, and now, oh, there we go. Okay. So the psychoanalyst interprets or looks at what the patient says and tries to come to understand the hidden meaning. And through this, the coded language of the unconscious, like I remember one thing, like if you have a dream about a train, that's always about sex or something like that. I mean, there's these standard kind of symbolic elements. You try to bring the unconscious to consciousness, and hopefully when that occurs, the client has some kind of emotional expression. How do you say that word? Abreaction? Is that how you say it? Abreaction. Some kind of emotional release, and then the symptom is diminished. That's sort of psychoanalysis in 4 minutes. It takes a little longer to learn it and to practice it, and I'm sure I made at least 4 good mistakes. Reich's relationship to psychoanalysis, okay. Reich was born in 1897. In 1918, so in 1918 he's like 21, right? He's in the army of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He develops psoriasis and is given a furlough, and he goes to Vienna to be treated for his psoriasis. He's in Vienna when it's clear that the war is over. I don't know if the actual treaty has been signed yet. I don't think it was. And while still a soldier, because he's never been formally removed from he enters the university. And the university had an arrangement where if you were a veteran, you could do courses in a more, less time-consuming way. He enters the law school, quickly decides that that's not for him, becomes a medical doctor, enters the medical school, and almost immediately starts practicing psychoanalysis. In those days, you didn't have to go through some kind of formal training. You would do it, and then you would consult with your therapist or whatever, So he starts doing psychoanalysis while he's a medical student. He went through a number, and I forget who it was at this particular time. Ask Heck. Okay, then we
They
don't.
spend a little more time in law school.
No, you read
You don't want to
We'll find out at some point.
Otto and Fader, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, Rado is much later, and that's in Berlin, as I recall, briefly. In any case, he has a therapist. His major contributions to psychoanalysis, let me get the names up here, so if I say any of these names, well, I skipped over a number of things. That's Charcot, the French guy with hypnosis. Reich's major contributions to psychoanalysis is first movement from symptom to character structure. And this shows up in his very first book. The first book that Reich publishes is in 1925, the impulsive character. Welcome, Hildy. And in the impulsive character, in the introduction, let me just read a sentence here. This translation is by Dr. Koblenzer, who I wish was here but isn't. For a long time, this is Reich in 1925, for a long time psychoanalysis has not been a merely symptomatic treatment. Rather, it has consistently been evolving into a therapy of the character. This technical change dates from Freud's first realization that what is essential in the analytic work does not consist of guessing the unconscious meaning of a symptom and communicating it to the patient, but in detecting and removing resistances. It's interesting, he attributes this to Freud, but actually Reich continues to focus on resistance. And if you think about resistance, that's something that underlies a symptom. And that's how he saw the resistance sort of, there was a characterological way of resisting life energy, and this is, I'm getting ahead to Reich now, that gives rise to the symptom. But in any case, Reich begins to see the importance of character structure as opposed to symptomatology as early as 1925. Here's a quote from Reich Speaks of Freud. If anyone wants to examine Freud's new slip later, I have the image. Let me see. Well, I'll just go to the book. Here's a quote from Reich Speaks of Freud, where Reich is looking back on psychoanalysis. He says, "You see, in the psychoanalysis of the early 20s, the neuroses or the neurotic symptom was considered to be something sick in an otherwise healthy organism. That was the idea then. It was my character analysis which introduced the basic concept that the character structure is ill, sick, while the neuroses, the neurotic symptom, is only an outgrowth of a general characterological condition." And it's very interesting. There's like an interesting parallel here between symptom and character structure. Like the symptom is just sort of a growth of the deeper character structure. And those of you who know like later work on cancer, where the cancer tumor is but a symptom of a deeper pathology. And I always use the phrase, I word the word carcinomatous cancer biopathy, but maybe there's a better, carcinomatous shrinking biopathy. But am I mispronouncing that first word?
Carcinomatous.
Carcinomatous, is that what it's? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
See, it's part of it being a dyslexic. In any case, there's this interesting parallel you see between saying the tumor is an outer symptom of a deeper illness, a pathology, and saying that the neurotic symptom is an outer or one sign of a deeper characterological structure. So in any case, you have Reich's movement from symptom to character. A second thing, Reich's continued focus on resistance. And this is very important because one of the things that Reich quickly observed is that you could bring the unconscious material to consciousness. The patient can recall, quote, the primal scene. Oh, I remember now when the dog bit me or whatever, you know. It probably wasn't a dog. But if there's no emotion, there would be no relief from the neurotic symptom. There had to be an emotional expression. And what was getting in the way? Well, the resistance to giving into the emotions. And so Reich just kept focusing on the resistance. And that sort of also is one of the roots of later vegetotherapy. What do I need to do to get this person capable of expressing emotion? So like their chest being constricted or something. In any case, so you have the movement from symptom to character structure. You have the focus on resistance. And then also Reich felt it was incredibly important to focus on the negative transference. That is, all of the ways in which the therapist, in the eyes of the patient, becomes the abusing parent or whatever. Most of my time in therapy with a certain therapist who will remain nameless involves hating his guts and trying to kill him. And that's the negative transference part. We've come to a reconciliation. But okay, so that's Reich's contributions to psychoanalysis. And again, Dr. Weitzner will amplify this in his turn. 30 minutes? No. I've been talking for 30 minutes. This is going to be interesting. I may talk a little longer than 40 minutes. To the body. Okay. The movement to the body has three major players. Sandor Ferenczi, here he is, Hungarian. He was part of the original circle of Freud's, dismissed by Jones as being mentally ill. I don't know if there was any basis for that dismissal.